everyone. Welcome to the Jazz Institute of Chicago and Lyric Opera's conversation with musicians from Champion, an opera by Terence Blanchard. My name is Heather Ireland Robinson, and we're thrilled to be partnering on promotion with Lyric Unlimited and Lyric Opera for the promotion of this historic piece. Before we jump in, I just want to thank Afton Battle, who is the Vice President of Lyric Unlimited and Artistic Operations, and my longtime professional colleague and sister in arts education and nonprofit, Jill LeCesne Potter, who is the Senior Director of Learning Programs at Lyric Unlimited. She's going to join us later to talk about programs that Lyric is doing around Champion. And then I want to thank the whole marketing team at Lyric and the entire Jazz Institute staff for pulling us all together for this amazing conversation that you're about to be a part of and about to hear about. The show Champion, just so you know, runs until February 11th. You can go to Lyric's website, lyric.org, for more details. Jazz Institute members get a really beautiful discount on the tickets. You feel sad because you're not a member? You can join today. You can join right away. You can just go to our website, jazzinchicago.org, sign up to be a member and get a discount code to get a discount on this amazing, amazing performance. You can find out a little bit more about Lyric and Jazz Institute at both of those sites. So we're here today to talk from a jazz perspective about the show, and we'll chat it up with the musicians, the Chicago jazz musicians that are a part of the show as well. But let me take this moment to introduce 7-time Grammy Award winner, 2-time Academy Award nominee for film scores, composer and executive artistic director for SF Jazz, 2024 NEA Jazz Master. I could go on. Trumpeter and writer of Champion, the jazz opera, Terence Blanchard.
Hey, Heather, how you doing?
Hello, sir. How's it going?
Good.
So we're here to talk about what you're doing. Thank you for all of this. Thank you for taking the time. But you're no stranger to our fair city, right?
Yeah.
I know you were here just 2 years ago for Fire Shut Up in My Bones. You played here just weeks ago. So I wouldn't be a Chicago girl born and raised on the South Side if I didn't ask you, what is it that you love about our great city? Playing here, being here, food, whatever it may be. But what is it about Chicago?
Well, Chicago's like New Orleans, like any of the great city in America. It's had its own history, has its own legacy of great music, great food, beautiful culture, and a lot of great jazz fans. You know, I've been playing Chicago since the early 80s with Art Blakey. You know, we used to play at the old Blackstone Hotel at in the Jazz Showcase.
Jazz Showcase.
Yeah, and I remember just meeting so many people, man, who really love the music, you know, and I've been seeing them show up to the opera. So I'm really appreciative of that. So, you know, Chicago is one of those great American cities, has a great music legacy, just like New Orleans.
Mm-hmm.
It's just colder, man. That's the only thing.
You gotta, I know the hawk will get you, but right. But right, we say, you know, jazz was created in New Orleans and raised here in the Midwest and Chicago and then spread out to the world. So I love hearing that perspective on our city. Now tell us about the show, your first opera. You know, everyone is abuzz, just like you said, because of the combination of jazz and opera. Can you give us just a quick overview of the show and maybe some thoughts on your inspiration for creating it?
Well, the story is about Emil Griffith, who was a welterweight fighter. You know, the reason that I wanted to do this opera, I've been a big boxing fan for a number of years, and when they first approached me about writing an opera, I thought they were crazy to begin with to call me, but that's another story. But when I decided on the topic, I decided on this one because there was something about the whole notion of how sweet of a personality Emil was. My best friend is a heavyweight champion named Michael Bent. He's the one who told me about Emil. And he told me he was a really sweet guy, but never came out and said that he was gay. And the other thing that I thought about was, you know, the first time I won a major award, I turned to my wife, gave her a kiss, and went up on the stage to receive my award. And yet this guy became welterweight champion. He couldn't celebrate that openly with anybody that he loved, you know? Right. And that to me was just a travesty. And then there's a line which we actually put in the opera where he said in an interview, he said, "Man, I killed the man and the world forgave me, but I love the man and the world wants to kill me." And that
Mm,
notion itself is a very powerful one. And at the time when I did it, it was 2013. I just kept saying, this is just a silly notion. Why are we still concerned about who loves who? You know,
right.
we're all human beings. We're all God's children. We just need to learn how to celebrate our differences and move on.
Mhm, mhm. And there's such a time, for that. As things
Mhm,
things are the same under here, but they're
mhm,
changing in public, and it is so vital. So it's
mhm.
so timely for so many different reasons. I am fresh off a plane from New York City this week, where I
Mhm.
went to see the Spike Lee exhibit at the Brooklyn
Oh,
Museum of Art. I went on purpose,
okay.
and I got to see Bleak's your actual trumpet, voiced by
Uh-huh.
you. As we all know, I mean, everyone knows you and Spike Lee are long-term
Mhm,
collaborators, including Mo Better Blues, Black Klansman, The Five Bloods. I could go on.
mhm.
I have a question from one of our staff members who is
Sure.
a trumpet player.
Uh-oh.
She actually I'm sorry, she plays the trombone. I'm sorry, I didn't
Okay.
mean to
Okay.
mix my brasses.
Okay. No,
Um, but
okay.
she's been with the Jazz Institute for 20 years, and she actually started our education programs. Her name is Zakia Fola, and
Mhm.
she wanted to ask, do you take the same approach, or what is your approach when scoring films versus composing operas?
Good question. Well, the main difference is, the intent for both are the same, trying to tell a story in the most cohesive way possible. The difference is with film, obviously, there's something that I'm reacting to because it's already shot. The dialogue is delivered in a certain way, whether it be accents or the tempo of the dialogue or the temperament of the actors, really gives you an indication of what the scenes need musically. With opera, there's none of that. I'm creating it all in my mind as I'm sitting there at the piano. And so the tempo of the scenes depend on how I feel about the scenes. The temperament
Mhm.
depends on, how we talk about them when I'm collaborating with the librettist. Um, and the most important thing is that, man, it's just a lot more music in an opera. I mean, it's
Constant.
yeah. I mean, really. I mean, there's times in a film where you can just have no music and the thing will be
Yeah.
fine, but we don't do that in opera. So even air has a certain tonal quality to it.
Mm. Does anything change? So with a score, you see the people, you know the people. Some of that I'm guessing happens before, during, or after. Does
Mhm,
anything change with the opera once you get a person in place? Like, have you written something in your beautiful studio or in a room by yourself?
mhm.
Then you get that actor that either brings something else to it or changes it. Was there any changes like that with any of the work you've done?
There are minimal changes that happen sometimes, but a lot of times it's not because it's such a big project. You
Yeah.
know, I once I finish writing it, it's sent out to everybody. Everybody shows up to rehearsal knowing the entire thing. And once we get there, there may be some changes in terms of like needing more time to move actors or singers around the stage. You know, some things
Mhm.
may feel a little awkward in some people's voices in terms of registers. So sometimes those things will be changed, but there's nothing major, changed at that point because it would be such, doing an opera, man, is like herding elephants. It's a huge
Mm,
behemoth of a thing to
yeah.
get to move. So once we have this kind of plot in terms of the story in place, man, it just takes off from there.
Hmm. And kind of on that same line, were there any aspects of opera specifically
Mhm.
that allowed you to express your musical voice in a way that differed from your previous works, and what was rewarding? Also, writing for voice,
Well, that's
I
it.
would imagine.
Yes.
Right, right. Not
Yeah.
just your voice, a point of view, but a voice, vocal.
Well, yeah, but and that's it because the thing about this is that not only do we have voice, but the voice obviously has the lyrics, words that help tell a story. But then you also have a chorus, which is a whole other,
Mm,
tonal color. Like in Fire, when we did Fire Shut Up in My Bones, there's a scene in there where there's an off stage chorus just giving like a tonal quality. Actually, we have the similar thing in Champion.
mm,
There's a big aria, that Justin sings called What Makes a Man a Man, And then right after that, he starts talking about there is no sound. And off the stage, the chorus is just given
Mm.
a color, underneath him. So, those things were like really new to me. And then writing in the register of voices, because none of them are the same, you know.
Right.
None of them, man. When you write for orchestra, if you write for cello, you write for cello. You know what I mean?
Cello. Right.
That
Right.
goes all over the world.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Somebody calls themselves a baritone, their register is here. Another baritone's register is here. Another one is here.
Hmm.
I mean, so it all has to change once you start the workshopping process.
Right. Right. And the musicians are going to join us later. And
Mm-hmm.
so we'll talk a little bit more about this. But I know our jazz audiences here with the Jazz Institute and otherwise just want to hear, how did you marry the two genres, or how did they influence each other?
I was very lucky, man. I had a great composition teacher named Roger Dickerson. And
Mm,
from the time that I was like 15 years old, he made me understand that, being a composer is to use all the tools at your disposal, and once I started getting experience in writing film music, writing for orchestra, he was the one that told me, he says, okay, now you need to think about bigger projects with this because you have this experience. And he says, and I want you to think about Stravinsky and how Stravinsky took Hungarian folklore and used the DNA of that, to create these bigger works. So I do the same thing. You know,
hmm
for example, in Fire Shut Up in My Bones, we needed like a real aggressive opening, and I didn't want to write like the typical orchestral thing. So I wrote an up-tempo swing thing,
hmm
that gave you this sense of urgency, but it wasn't really intrusive. And with this, there's moments. There's one of my favorite moments in this piece is when the mother sings a piece just with bass,
mm,
because when I originally had written it, I thought about Ella Fitzgerald and Ray Brown, you know, performing together. So I try to use all of those different tools to help tell the story. If it's more advantageous for us to just have strings and do something orchestral, so be it. If it's more advantageous for us to have like a big band when she comes on the
hmm
stage for the first
hmm
time, so be it. I try to use everything at my disposal.
And you said you had that teacher when you were 15. Where was that? Where were you?
Here in New Orleans,
Okay, school, in
my
high
mom.
school or
No. Well, I studied privately with him.
right.
Yeah,
This is the story I'm trying to get. Right, exactly.
yeah. No,
Hmm.
my mom's sister went to college with him and knew of him, and he only really took college kids at the time.
Hmm.
She brought me over there just to talk to him, and I had to play for him and so forth. So he decided to take me on at 15, and man, he was like, he's the guy. You know what I mean? When they called me to doing opera, man, I called them. I said, listen, man, these people want me to do this. I don't know what to do, you know.
Right.
And I thought he was going to give me like some really concrete answers. The only thing he said was, trust your training and don't write an opera, tell a story.
Mm. And I just love that. First of all, the vision of your mom to
Mm.
think about, what you needed as a genius musician coming up through the ranks, but also that you had that connection. And to this day, you could reach back and say,
Oh,
hey, how do I do this? So the power of mentorship, the power of non-traditional, and yes, traditional education, but the power of all those other things that can go along with it, and how long that lasts. I think
let me
that's
just tell
so
you this
fun.
too. Let me just tell you this too. Heather.
Hmm.
The other thing too, it's also about brilliant teachers. So my teacher, Roger, never taught me out of a book. He would always write things down for me, and that became my workbook.
Mm,
Years later, I found a very famous book called The Craft of Musical Composition by Paul Hinderman. And I said, I need to further my studies. Bought the book, and everything that I'm reading in the book is what he taught me, just
wow.
freehand. And I said,
Wow.
well, how come you didn't tell me about this book? He said, well, you're a kid. I didn't want to bombard you with that. He said, I figured out a way to get you the same information in a way that's
Hmm.
really helpful to you.
Do
So
you
great.
have your notebook? Do you have
There's
your
some,
notes?
no, because
Okay. I'll
we
put it in the
lost it.
museum. Oh.
No, we lost them in Hurricane Katrina. That was,
Oh, oh
yeah,
my goodness, of course. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Um, well, this is fabulous. I'm going to ask you one question. What do you have coming up next? And then we have a question from one of our students that we're gonna bring in.
Well, I'm working on some new music for the E Collective. I'm trying to find a topic for a third opera,
Hmm.
and I have some TV and film production stuff that's coming up.
Super.
Oh, and then I'm going
Um,
to be on touring with Herbie. in
Where do
March.
y'all start? Where are you all starting that?
I have no idea, but
Okay, I'm putting you on the spot. Okay,
yeah,
okay.
I'll look at it.
All right. All good things, all amazing things. So we now have a question from one of our former Jazz Links students at the Jazz Institute. We have a robust slate of education programs in school, out of school, anywhere you need it. And Dakari was one of our students. So Dakari Barclay is a trumpeter based in Chicago.
Hmm.
He just graduated from William Patterson University in Wayne, New Jersey, with a master's in jazz performance, but he has an undergrad degree from Morehouse College in finance. We love that Dakari went around and came back and just kept on kept on playing through it all, right? So here's Dakari with his question.
Hi, Mr. Blanchard. My name is Dakari Barclay. I'm a trumpet player as well. My question is, what advice would you give to a performer who struggles to compose and arrange without sounding too obscure, while simultaneously attempting to not sound too similar to canonized material and artists?
Well, Dakari, first of all, let me say, man, I'm proud of everything that you've accomplished so far. You know, keep up the good work, keep working hard. The questions that you asked is one that I've asked myself a million times, you know, when I started my career. And I think a lot of it has to do with your taste. You know, when you study composition and you learn how all of these millions of permutations of your original idea, that's the starting point. The next part of it is you always have to learn how to listen. And Roger Dickinson always used to teach me that. He said there's a little voice in the back of your brain saying, hey man, you know, I'll give you an example. There's a song that I'd written years ago for my band, and I'd use all of these techniques to write it. But then when I got to a certain point, I kept saying, that feels a little too repetitive. Let me take a note out there. Oh, you know what? I feel like this thing should evolve here when it gets here. So let me move it and put the accent on the end because people have heard it on the downbeat. There's so many little things like that that you have to learn how to listen to for yourself, because you know what they are. You know what those things are that are going to bother you, you know, and you have to trust that, because that is what makes all of the music human, what makes it real. And that is the thing that people are going to respond to. You'll see. Now, you don't want to go overboard with it, so there's a fine line between that. Art Blakey used to tell us all the time, the easiest thing to do is to write something that nobody can play, right? So you don't want to be too hip. He also used to tell us you never want to be too hip, because too hip's make an ass. So just be mindful of that and you'll be fine.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you. I took some from that, so thank you.
Yeah.
Well, let's bring everybody in. You got an amazing crew of local jazz musicians. Three of them are with us today. One of them has to leave early, so if he disappears, everybody know that he's teaching and playing and doing all kinds of things all throughout the country. But we'd like to bring on Dave Miller, your guitar player, Quin Kirchner, drums. Christian Dillingham is joining us as well, the bass player. Stu Mindeman on piano could not join us today. So, fellas, welcome. Thanks for taking the time. And we'll just jump in. No need to raise a hand or who's next. I already spoke. What was this experience like, and how were you all incorporated into the operatic process, so to speak?
Well, I'll start. I mean, for me, it's it's a really unique experience to play drum set with an orchestra, and I think the process has just been a learning experience in, you know, trying to treat the drum set as an orchestral instrument as much as it is a jazz instrument. Um, and really that gets down to dynamics and trying to use intensity at various volumes and really kind of get into some of the orchestral music, but then also really bring jazz styles where it's appropriate, you know, because it's written like that all over the board.
Yeah, it's been a great privilege to play this piece. I come from a background of jazz and orchestral playing, and so I feel like it's not too often that I get to employ all of those kind of skill sets in one in a piece like this. So it's been challenging and just a lot of fun to be able to play this way in that context. And it really draws from like Quinn mentioned, it's you have to be sensitive to all the sections in the orchestra as a rhythm section player in this piece, as well as we're following the singers as best we can, and so there's a lot happening, and you have to really be flexible to all of that.
Yeah, those are great answers so far, and it's been a great privilege for me to do this as well. And thank you, Terence, for putting all this together and having us. And I think one of the things that there are very challenging things about it, such as following a conductor, which as jazz musicians we never really do, and sort of understanding where the downbeat is. I think that's probably the hardest thing for me. And but also having the opportunity to try to blend with other instruments that we don't normally play with. Like sometimes I'll be playing with the string section, and sometimes I'll be playing with bassoon or bass clarinet, and I have to it's not necessarily stated in the part, but it's a fun challenge to try to figure out, okay, how can I make the sound of the guitar blend more naturally with the strings versus a bassoon, which I actually have to hit the string in a different way or attack the string in a different way to make that blend cohesively. And even in the moments in the piece that are perhaps more jazzy, or we're instructed to improvise, there's still such a different set of considerations. Yes, we're playing with an entire orchestra, but then oftentimes when we're improvising underneath the operatic voices. So you really have to really choose your moments in which you can express something that emotes jazz essentially without stepping on the opera singer's toes. So it's a really beautiful challenge of all these worlds coming together, which was kind of already discussed already, but yeah, I really appreciate that.
So there were moments of improvisation.
Yes.
There were times that was allowed. How is that communicated, or how is that? I mean, you're looking at sheet music, and then how does that work in the pit, so to speak? Any insight
for
into
me
that? Kind of like you said.
Sure. I'd love to hear why Terence chose these moments, but for me specifically, in my part, I have chord symbols like we often do when we're reading music as jazz musicians. In these moments of improvisation, excuse me, we'll be reading through a set of chord changes that sort of dictate the form, the harmonic form and the rhythmic form with which we can essentially, improvise as we do as jazz musicians, using that language, that melodic and rhythmic language. Yeah.
I'll tell you this, Dave. Times I pick spots where I think the improvisation could actually be the conscious of the characters that are on stage. You know what I mean?
Oh wow, that's awesome.
Yeah. So it's like when Imelda's walking on, and you guys are playing, the horns are playing, right? And hear some improvisation. It really adds to her attitude, her character. But I laughed, man, when you talked about the downbeat, because that's when I first got in the film world, that's always been the thing. Because Heather, jazz musicians go da da da. They're right with the conductor. That's not how an orchestra works.
Wow, right.
They react to the thing. So a conductor would be like da 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 da. You know what I mean? So they react to his downbeat, not with the downbeat. So when you bring jazz musicians in for the first time, there's always that rehearsal where it just kind of like goes
Right.
haywire for a second.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, no, this means
Yeah,
that. Right.
yeah.
Right.
And look, and Christian, man, I love, because I was talking about it earlier. One of my favorite artists, Far Away Long Ago, and it's just him and the vocalist. And man, you sounded great the other day.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Because he's got to follow a conductor and the vocalist.
Wow.
These are two people he's dealing with. You know what I mean?
Mm-mm. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I might look. Well, I meant to scream to you, hang in there.
I could have used it.
You got it now. You could look back and go, did it.
I talked to one of the bass players, and who will remain nameless, but I said, yeah, like sometimes there's like I'm seeing one thing, I'm hearing something else, and it's like I was kind of like, who would I go with? And he said, that's opera.
Exactly. Exactly. I had to learn that myself, man. That's exactly it. You know what's always like what's really interesting. Most of the public don't realize that even though the audience can hear these guys, sometimes the singers can't really hear them on the stage. You know what I mean? So they really rely on a conductor, man. And with opera conductors, my hat goes off because they have to keep track of everything. And sometimes you'll see an opera conductor conduct the orchestra, and he'll do this because he sees the singers about to come in too early because they can't really hear what the music is, and they'll do like this, and then they'll give them a cue. It's amazing, man, what goes on, just to make it all come together.
Yeah. Yeah, I see the show this weekend, so y'all gonna have me looking down and up and out. I want to hear some stories from the pit. So I love a behind the scenes tale. You all kind of told some. So as you're thinking of that, and some of you all touched on this, how did this influence the way you will play moving forward? Or is it just this moment? Is there anything you've picked up, or is it more just kind of being there in the moment and figuring out how to do it? And this is a great experience and I will do this again. But did it inform you on the other side in any way? And if not, that can be the answer.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be really ready next time I do an opera. I'll tell you that. But,
Right.
no, I mean, it's been an amazing learning experience because it's such a unique setting, being in that giant opera house, and the acoustics is really something that I work with all the time as a drummer. Especially playing unmiked in jazz settings all the time. It's really balance is a huge thing that I think about a lot in dynamics, and this is like unlike anything I've done, where it's mostly acoustic in this giant 4,000 person room. And the singers are largely unmiked, so you're really dealing with really detailed dynamic. And as a drummer, to play quieter is harder. It's playing at a normal sort of basic volume where everything is real easy is one thing. As you try to get quieter, you actually have to physically exercise restraint to a way where if you're trying to keep, especially if you're trying to keep intensity. There's a lot of experiences throughout the whole piece where you're doing a real intense number and then a soloist sings over it, so you have to be really intense about dynamics while keeping the energy. And
hey man, let me tell you, Quinn, you're doing a great job at it though, dude.
Oh man, thank you for saying that,
dude. I mean, because when I heard you, well, I was at the Zitch Probe when I heard that you guys sounded great there. But I was thinking about what you just talked about. I said, because it's hard, because jazz musicians, we're used to doing our own thing, our own way whenever we play a show. And then, we get into this situation and it's like, we want you to do your thing, but can you bring it down here? We don't want to overpower the vocalist. But at the same time, we need the intensity of what that is.
Right.
And it's something that we don't really talk about a lot in jazz because we don't really have to, you know what I mean? But man, you guys have done a great job. Everybody. I mean, when I heard you guys the other night, man, I was just totally blown away.
Oh, thank you. That's wonderful to hear. I'm happy you're happy. And
Yeah.
last thing I'll say is just what's really interesting about when you were asking about improvisation. As a drummer, oftentimes even when you're
Mm.
playing in jazz situations, everyone gets a chart and it has their part on it, maybe the written part or the chords they're supposed to play, and then the drummer's just like, "Oh yeah, drummer, you just kind of just play drums."
Right. Give the drummer
That's funny.
some. Right.
Just play
Right.
drums to what
You'll
everything
you'll
else.
hear it. You'll hear it.
You'll hear it, or you get like a one sentence sort of instruction. So it's cool to have written parts, but then also a version of that in this monumental work of art where there's lots of space for me to ad lib, especially the climactic fight scene where a lot of the drum set, there's this like 5/4 kind
Mm.
of rhythm going. It's really intense, and I'm doing a lot of kind of improvising over that while they're boxing, and that to
He's
me is
catching.
just
He's
so
not.
fun.
He's not telling you. He's catching a lot of the punches
There's some of
at
that
Okay.
too. Yeah.
the end of
Okay.
the fight.
Right.
What you did, man. Now, look,
Wow.
my hat goes off to you because I know that wasn't easy, dude. Trying to keep
Yeah.
it moving, and yeah. So
Oh
that,
my goodness.
yeah.
Yeah, that to me is just so fun and exciting, and it's a real
Mhm.
honor to be able to be there doing that.
Right.
Yeah.
I'll say
Chris.
this, and then I have
Yeah.
to take off,
Perfect.
unfortunately. But I think for me, it's just another reminder of what is possible. That there's especially for young musicians coming to see this, just the level of storytelling and the merging of all these musical worlds that if you're like us and you have gone to music school, it kind of goes against the grain. So for me personally, in my background, this is like the blend of like what I love to do, both of these. And so to actually be able to be a part of something that brings them together, it's just been a enlightening experience. And just to, see like what's possible with jazz, opera, orchestral music, storytelling, and that's not even including like what the story represents. So that's been my takeaway from this whole experience. And with that, I'm sorry, but someone's
This
knocking
is
on the
great.
door. So-
Christian, thank you so
Man,
much. You gave us 3 extra minutes. Thank you.
All right.
Thanks so
thank
much.
you.
Take
And
care.
everybody out there watching, I would just encourage you to look up each of these musicians. Most of them are on social media or they have websites. Just see what they're about, see what they're doing next, see what's going on, both with this production and just around the city and around the nation as they tour and play. So please give them some love and check them out. Elsewhere, Christian gave us a little bit of a behind the scenes. Does anybody have what I'm going to call a tale from the pit, or rehearsals that they want to share? Anything that the people would love to hear about, good, bad, or otherwise. And you guys have shared some amazing moments, by the way, already. Is there something?
Dave, you got something?
I think in general, it's kind of fascinating to, for me, especially as a guitarist, like I'm generally nowhere near an orchestra pit. So it's like kind of thrilling to be a part of that and just see the culture of that. And to be sort of swallowed into a larger whole of an ensemble, and to see classical musicians communicate verbally with jazz musicians about, essentially when we talk about music, we're just describing abstract sound, if you want to break it down into that sort of thing. So as a jazz musician, we have our own language as to how to describe how we want something to be played. But classical musicians, there's some crossover there, but there's a whole lot of things that don't cross over. And especially with classical music, just a litany of terms that, maybe I've heard somebody say before and just like sort of nod and be like, okay, yeah, sforza, menando, whatever. We got it. I got you. And there's not time, nor is it really appropriate to ask the conductor, be like, what did you mean by that?
Right,
I
right.
just have to listen and just sort of respond like in the moment, and just there's a sense that of like hyper focus that I have to maintain, not only in just keeping up, verbally with what's going on, but just like it's like 2 hours, 2.5 hours of music, a fair amount of which I'm not actually playing, and I have to count. I have to count my butt off to like keep track of
Mm.
everything and make sure I get there for the next thing. And so that leads to some kind of hilarious moments for me personally. And then I always, after any of the rehearsals or any of the shows, I'm always like, why am I so mentally exhausted right now?
Yeah.
It's like, oh yeah, I was
Yeah.
hyper focused for the last
For
3 or 4 hours.
2.5 hours.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
You know what's funny about hearing you say that, Dave? With my operas, there's always, you guys don't know this, but I'll just tell you, there's always been a debate on how we should number the pages. Should we number the pages from 1 all the way through to the end, or should we start with 1 with each scene? You know what I mean?
Oh, okay.
Right. And
Yeah.
then, and it's funny because the first time I think we did it, we had it numbered from 1 all the way. So by the end of it, you had bar 927 or something
Oh,
like
wow.
that. Yeah, it's
Oh
crazy.
no.
So when he started talking about counting, that's what I was thinking about. I'm like,
Yeah.
so where
It's
we at?
almost just as
Your
hard
cue.
as playing.
911. Here we go.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's.
Would that have
I'm
changed it
glad
if
you
the
fixed
page?
it.
Yeah. Okay. There's the answer.
It's a lot easier to start over at each new
Yeah.
piece. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Good to
Yeah.
hear.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Well, we try to
I-
make sure that you guys have musical cues to keep your place.
Yeah, I mean the cues are big too, and you should see the book that I'm working out of because it has so many notes in it, and some of them are kind of funny, like just maybe little things like lines that someone says, or there's a lot of times one of the ones I use a lot is key change.
Yeah.
So I might have a page full of rests, and if I just mark where the key change happens or what sounds like a key change to me, I'm like, okay, now I know we're there. Or I might just throw like horns to have a little like solo moment, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And that's really been helpful, because the counting is sometimes just as hard or harder than playing the music, because, and what maybe isn't very obvious to the listener, but there are a lot of time signature changes that happen. And, you might have some of these sections, a bar of 3, 2 bars of 5, a bar of 4, back to 5, and then a couple 6/4 bars, back to 4/4 for 9 bars. Then we go to 3 for like 3, 1 bar, 4/4 rest, etc. If you're not really paying attention,
Yeah.
you are
Yeah.
lost real easy. So
And the wild part about it is that it's not supposed to sound like that.
it doesn't sound like
It
that.
doesn't
That's the
sound like,
trip.
yeah.
Yeah, that's the trip
It's
about
supposed to
it.
sound natural. I mean, well, you got to blame that on the librettist, man. So
Well, that's how we speak, right? We speak in
right, exactly.
all kinds of. If you were trying to map it out, it would look crazy,
Right.
So,
Exactly.
yeah, that's been really interesting too.
That's funny though. I think about that a lot, man. Whenever we do these things with jazz artists, I don't know that I'm saying, I've been waiting for one group to mutiny.
I'm not playing that.
And y'all didn't tell me it was going to be like this.
Well, that's why you get pros,
Oh my God. Yeah, that's why
I've done it.
You make it sound easy though. That's for sure.
Yeah.
It's a fun challenge. Yeah.
I wanted to give you all a chance. You've kind of done it here, just as we are beginning to wrap up, but to ask each other questions. And it could be about anything. It could be, you have an opportunity here with each other. It could be about something that you all worked on. It could be something about maybe you saw him play somewhere else. So if there are any questions or specific questions about the piece that maybe you didn't have a chance, any of you could ask a question of any of you. So any questions for each other?
Man, yeah. Well, let's see. I guess I'm curious, like if when you were writing for, like thinking of the drum set, like if you have certain drummers in mind when you do that, or certain people's languages, musicians' languages.
Yeah, I mean, Jeff Watts played on it, you know what I
Right.
mean? And
Yeah, that's what I was wondering.
Jeff's a good friend of mine. So yeah, I mean, I heard, man, it's funny that you said that because at times I could hear Jeff, I could hear Ralph Peterson, I could hear Smith, and I could hear Lewis Nash on certain, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Because
cool.
those are guys that I come up with, and their playing has left a huge mark on my perception of,
Right.
of music. So, like in Fire Shut Up in My Bones, that opening sequence, that's Lewis Nash to me. You know what I mean?
Cool. Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. And then obviously with some of the stuff that's here, one of the dancers who's from New Orleans, he talked about, the marriage scene.
Right. Yep.
He says, "Man, you threw in the New Orleans street beat on that." I'm like, "Yeah." you know.
I know. I love that you found a way to get it in there too. And for me,
Yeah.
I'm like, you know, excited to be able to play that style too and try to give it something authentic.
How well can you guys hear the vocalist from where you are?
It's from where I'm sitting, it's pretty good, I mean, I think when the orchestra gets its loudest, it's drowned out a bit, but
Mhm.
we don't have any monitors or anything like that, but
I know.
it's not like I can't hear them at all. It's
Yeah.
certainly, if I could take a little bit more, I would, but
Right.
for the acoustic setting that it is, it's pretty good actually. Yeah.
Okay. Good.
Yeah, I think for when the orchestra gets loud, it does become harder to hear the singers. And like going back to what Quinn said about jazz musicians self-balancing, if I were to actually self-balance, I would like come way down, but it's the understanding that like the singers are singing out into the audience, and that, I'm sure Enrique, the conductor, would tell us. He's never shy about telling us to turn down.
No,
So,
no.
I'm sure like that would happen if necessary. So you just kind of have to trust that it's all coming together out in the audience. Yeah.
It is, and that's the most miraculous thing about experiencing this as a person who's producing it. There's so many elements that you guys don't enjoy the way we do as a listener out front. You know what I mean? Because this is they don't use monitors. That's the whole notion of what an opera is unamplified singing. That's the term, and with that comes a lot of problems, just physical problems that we have to overcome. And that's the reason why you have a conductor, right?
Hmm.
You
Hmm.
have a conductor there to make sure everybody stays on track, and it's an amazing thing when it all comes together, because you got to think too. Justin, the guy who plays the leading role, he just posted something, but he put a picture of just himself on the stage, and he said, even though I'm alone on the stage, there are 100 people working in this moment when I'm by myself. The orchestra, the lighting, everything set. And when you think about it, there's just a lot of stuff that has to come together to make it work.
Yeah, I mean, that has been a really eye-opening thing too, is just to see the magnitude of the production and all of the people, the musicians, the technicians who are, you know, doing amazing work and putting and all part of this moving, you know, giant machine organism really that is creating the performance that the audience sees, and it's really it's kind of mind-boggling, really, when you see the scale and everyone involved. But it's beautiful to see it all come together.
Did you guys get a chance to see the sets backstage from the other productions?
I have seen a few things, like when we're backstage. I've seen the Cinderella sets that are there too, because they were doing a Cinderella as well.
Yeah.
And there's actually a funny thing is down when you're in the back, when you come out of the pit, and you're basically under the stage, and that's where you end up moving around a lot when you're going to and from the pit. There's
Mhm.
a few, they store some stuff down, the prop department stores some stuff down there too, and there's this big case that says suit of armor, with a picture of a giant suit of armor that probably gets used every other production for something. And
It's not something you'll see at a jazz club, bro.
Right.
No, I know.
You got to see the pumpkin, the behind the scenes, the pumpkins and
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah.
This is fascinating, you all. I am not a musician. I'm a theater kid in the way back, and just been doing nonprofit management and arts management for many, many years. And I'm always fascinated and amazed by you all, musicians, composers, for all the reasons that you just said. I know I learned a lot today. I know that our audiences did too. And I feel like we could sit here forever. And I'm just so grateful to you all for the art that you produce together and separate, and for taking the time here today. Thank you. I know folks are going to be beyond thrilled to see the show, and I'm sure everybody has enjoyed this conversation. Before we close, I want to welcome in Miss Jill LeCesne Potter of Lyric Unlimited. Jill and I have known each other, speaking of being involved in nonprofit arts management and leadership for many, many years. Known each other for a long time. But she's going to talk about some of the programming that's happening around Champion.
Yes, hello, Heather. It's so great to see you and everyone. Champion is a gem for anyone in programming, anyone in education and civic engagement. And this piece has offered us no shortage of content to be able to engage audiences, really of many ages, I will say. Last week, we started with the dress rehearsal. We welcomed high school students in. It was amazing to see their reaction to this piece. The content is heavy. We think that they're mature enough for it, and to be able to engage in conversation with one another around the work that they're seeing. We had one student who walked out, and you have these teenagers who are coming in the building. It's dark, it's comfortable, it's quiet. And this one guy is just talking to his friends as he's walking down the stairs. He's like, dude, he's like, my body wanted to go to sleep so bad, but my eyes wouldn't let me. He's like, I had to know what was going to happen, and that's what we want to see. It's the perfect piece to be the point of entry for young people into the world of opera. And so that was just fantastic. I mean, it was like the quote of the night. So for opening night, we have an amazing exhibition by the artist and photographer Patrick McCoy. Patrick was, I know, right? You just can't say the name without all the hearts around him. Patrick was an environmental scientist at some point in his life. And then in the 80s, he started riding his bike around the city with a camera because he wanted to teach himself how to take photographs. And every place he went, he would find these men who would say, take my picture, just take my picture. And many of these men, of course, are in Chicago. It's the time of Harold Washington. It's the time of house music. It's the time of the rise of HIV/AIDS. And so Patrick documented a lot of these men, many of the men who happened to be gay men, who were navigating the tough terrain of, the moments between pain, peace, and pleasure, of just take my picture, document me, see me. And that speaks so much to the character of Emile that we see. So to have these pieces in conversation with one another is utterly just fantastic. And also to see them in the house. They are in the lobby and in the mezzanine area right now. Anyone can come to Lyric Opera to see those pieces between 9:30 and 11:30, and to see them, in this building, Black men, all ages. There are some that are of, there's this one piece that's been a favorite of one of our staff members called Tire Fire. And it's two young Black boys who are showing off their clothes. And behind them is literally a fire, just cloud of black smoke. So that's one of the things that we have happening. The piece is also rich in offering us a snapshot of life as it was in Hagen's Hole, which also mirrors places in Chicago. Patrick talks about a place called the Rialto where folks would gather. So we are in collaboration with the Center on Halsted that will have an event with Dr. Lady J, who is the first drag queen with a PhD in musicology, as she refers to herself. So there'll be some conversation around that. tomorrow night here at the Opera House is a post-panel discussion around the Black liberation movement in classical music, which I think is critical as we speak to this piece. Of course, in 2022, Terence was here as the second Black composer in the history of lyric opera to have Fire Shut Up in My Bones mounted on the stage. And, you know, the piece prior to that, with the first Black composer here, was in 1997. So when we think about now, we're at 2024, Terence is back in the house with Champion. It's really a moment to dig into that conversation around Black composers and what this means for contributions to the field. So we'll have a post-panel discussion then. And February 6th, we have Drag Night at the Opera House. It's called Drag Night Out. So we'll have a red carpet walk, which will be nice. You'll also see some familiar costuming and characters as part of Champion, which also speaks to the glitz and glamour that's also associated with this piece. We have Jazz Night also that's coming up. Heather, I know your constituents and fans and followers would love to come and see Champion on that night. That's February 3rd. We'll also have some special pricing. You visit our website at lyricopera.org. You can check that out. And so, yeah, I mean, there's just really no shortage of events. Oh, and the last event that we'll be having, February 9th, just prior to closing on the 11th, we have a celebration of African diasporic art and culture, which will be fantastic, just honoring the work and contributions from the African diaspora. So we are just excited to have this piece and, of course, to be partnering with you, Heather, for this conversation and other events.
We were absolutely thrilled to be able to do this with you, for you, to just further the message and the impact of the show, which has its own legs, but we definitely wanted our jazz lovers to get something special and hear something special. Again, if you're a member of the Jazz Institute, we got some wonderful discounts, but please go to lyric.org and jazzinchicago.org to find out more. And again, find these musicians, find out what they're doing. Again, they've got websites, they've got social media. So follow them and get to know them. And we'll see you at the theater, everybody. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.